Bitcoin has finally hit the $80,000 mark. It's at a new all-time high, and the big question is, does it still make sense to buy that high? Some people say this is just FOMO, it's fear of missing out, you're gonna get wrecked. Other people say Bitcoin will climb forever. I like to look at data. I like to time the markets, and I try to determine where we currently are in the market with indicators that used to work very well in the past. Now let's have a look at those different numbers. One of the best metrics to time the cycle bottom, I believe, is the realized price. Now the realized price simply looks at all of the Bitcoin and looks at when have they last moved, at what price did they last move. In other words, we know what is the aggregate cost basis, what is the average price of the market. Because the current price is just for how much has Bitcoin moved the last time. The realized price is the aggregate of everything. And whenever the current price is below the realized price, the market in aggregate is in losses. And this is a phenomenal time historically to buy Bitcoin. Usually we are at those kinds of levels only for a few months. I personally even took out personal loans during that time to buy Bitcoin. Now we are currently hitting all-time highs. So of course we are very far away from that average cost basis, but still it's good to track it. Nevertheless, it's currently at $33,000. You might have to wait another year, 2, maybe even 3 years until we get back to the realized price. It's increasing over time. And so it's not necessarily time to go in with massive leverage and bet the farm and get a HELOC on your house and put all that money into Bitcoin. But it is still a good time to ride the current momentum, but more on this in a second. There is a slightly more advanced version of the realized price indicator, and that is the market value to realized value Z-score. Now what does this mean? Market value is simply just the current market cap or the current market price. Realized value is again the realized price. So we look at the current price relative to the realized price. Now Z-score means we look at that delta between those two prices and we put this into relationship with the current volatility. So volatility means how much is the price going up and down over time. Is it just very calm or is it very, very hectic? Now when it's very hectic, then we can allow for higher prices because this might just be a random shoot to the upside. Now Z-score means we look at that delta between those two prices and we put this into relationship with the current volatility. So volatility means how much is the price going up and down over time. Is it just very calm or is it very, very hectic? Now when it's very hectic, then we can allow for higher prices because this might just be a random shoot to the upside. However, when we are very calm, then just a little bit above the realized price might already be a red flag. So we simply look at the delta relative to the volatility, the market value to realized value Z-score. And so here is that chart. And again, it is historically a very good time to buy whenever the current price is below the realized price. So this means simply the MVRV score is in this green area, but it also shows us potential selling opportunity. And the market value to realized value Z-score is at around 7. It was historically a very, very good time to sell. Now it's important to, of course, afterwards buy back in again, right? When we take profit at those kinds of levels, we have to watch closely when to reallocate again. And so this metric already shows us that we are not at incredibly elevated levels, relatively speaking. Yes, the market is in profit, but historically, when the bull market turned around, it was much more even in profit. Now here's the beauty of the blockchain, right? You can see all of those different transactions and we can of course just aggregate them and take some averages, calculate the realized price. But we can also segregate different holders. We can look at the holders that have held Bitcoin for 10 years or for 5 years or for 3 years. And we can look at how does this develop over time. And the investors that tend to hold Bitcoin for longer, they then tend to sell into the bull markets. In other words, when the long-term holders sell, we might potentially also consider selling. Are they currently selling? Here is one very straightforward metric. So this is the HODL waves. It shows us, based on holding durations, how much of the entire Bitcoin supply is allocated to those different segments. And what we see over here are the segments up until 6 months. So those are the short-term holders. And we can see that in a bull market, at the end of a bull market, the short-term holders tend to hold more and more of the supply. At the peak of 2018, when Bitcoin was at 20K, roughly half of the supply was held by wallets that just acquired Bitcoin in the last half year. However, when we are at the bottom of a bear market, we have the exact opposite. Less than 30% was held by those short-term holders. And so again, whenever this is peaking, we also tend to be peaking out with the price action. currently we are still very, very low on the short-term speculation. So yes, for the person that's not very experienced with Bitcoin and with these analytics, it might make sense to now sell at 80K, because in the past we have very often seen also how Bitcoin turned around very close to the all-time high. The risk to reward doesn't seem that great, but when we look under the hood, when we look at actually what happens behind the price action, who's driving the prices, things still look very, very healthy. Now there is something slightly odd, and that is we don't see growth in terms of numbers, how many wallets hold at least one Bitcoin. In other words, people just the dollar cost average into Bitcoin long term, right? And the longer you do this, the more you should in the end hold in your wallet. Thus, there should be more and more wallets over time that hold one Bitcoin. That growth though has somewhat stalled. So check this out. This is the number of addresses that have at least one Bitcoin, and this was very nicely growing over time. And it seems like in the last year or so, we are pretty much flat. Why can the price appreciate that much when the dollar cost averagers apparently have stopped dollar cost averaging? Or when the savers that put their savings into Bitcoin seem to not do that anymore? I believe the answer is the Bitcoin ETF. The price is currently getting that high for Bitcoin because now traditional finance and private investors through the ETF buy and buy more Bitcoin. The Trump election brought a lot of bullishness into the market. Trump is pro-crypto. And so the people that are normally outside, they don't want to learn how to use Binance, or they don't want to learn how to use a hardware wallet, etc. They simply just want to get allocation to the asset class. They are now buying the ETF. And there is a crucial change that happened in the last roughly 4 to 6 weeks. What we see over here are the Bitcoin ETF flows daily since launch. We can see that especially in the last few weeks, this was very positive. And this does matter for the price. Check out the correlation of the ETF net flows here on the x-axis versus the price performance on the y-axis. There's clearly a connection. And here is the change that happened. Initially, when the Bitcoin ETF launched, there was a lot of headwind because there was a precursor to the ETF, the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. Now, when the ETF was launched, the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust was then sold off because it was pretty expensive, as in the annual fees were pretty high. And then a lot of funds moved from the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust to the ETFs that were much cheaper. For example, the IBIT ETF by BlackRock. And so we couldn't really clearly determine how much of the inflows that we have seen into those new instruments were simply just conversions from Grayscale versus new money coming in. Now we start to see the picture because all of those conversions have pretty much happened. There aren't that many outflows from Grayscale anymore. Here are the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust flows, and this was the headwind I was talking about initially. And this is now subsided to pretty much zero. So all the money that now flows into the new ETFs are 100% buying pressure on Bitcoin spot. Because that's the difference with those ETFs, right? We prior had only futures ETFs, but those futures wouldn't directly translate into purchases on the market. With the spot ETF, those ETFs need to have physical Bitcoin behind them, which are usually stored on Coinbase. And so now the big question is, when should we sell? If everything looks still so great and the price is supported by the Bitcoin ETF, when should we actually take profit? I personally use the value days destroyed indicator for that. I look at what are the whales doing that hold a lot of Bitcoin, that haven't moved their Bitcoin for a long time, and that then after years of holding hundreds of Bitcoin decide to finally sell. When they make that big decision for themselves, when they move the market, I also want to get out. So when the diamond hands, the whales and the diamond hands, they sell, then I sell as well. And this had been a very good approach in the past. It helped me time the intermediate top in the middle of March of this year. This is when the value days destroyed metric turned red, and I then subsequently bought back in roughly 10% lower. It's also a good metric to simply determine when a bull market might stop or at least slow down. So we turned red at around 40K. Of course, Bitcoin afterwards still moved to 60K, but most gains at the time were not made in Bitcoin, they were made in the altcoins. Currently, the value days destroyed metric is still very, very low. So the long-term holders are not selling. Everything looks super rosy. I don't have a crystal ball either, right? I simply just look at the data and I try to be as objective with the data. I am sometimes also very bearish. This is not a channel that always hypes up crypto that says you have to buy X and Y and Bitcoin will go to 1 million next year. I try to be objective. I am sometimes bearish. Feel free to check out older videos. Feel free to check out the videos around the middle of March of this year. Now here is what I believe will happen. Because the market is mainly supported by the Bitcoin ETF, the Bitcoin dominance is likely going to continue to rise. Now there's likely going to be a turnaround at some point. What we've seen in the past is that when Bitcoin dominance was at around 70%, so when 70% of all of crypto was just Bitcoin and the rest was altcoins, that's then when the altcoins were able to rally, when Bitcoin dominance fell, and that's when you really wanted to be in meme coins, etc. We are not yet there. I know some meme coins are going up. I know a lot of money can be made with meme coins, but the altcoin market in aggregate is not outperforming. So we can simply look at the flip side. This is the others dominance. This looks at all of the cryptocurrencies that are not in the top 10. How important are they as a fraction of crypto? I believe this is likely going to continue to go down still for a bit. And so especially in this current market, I believe it makes no sense to hold 20 or 30 different altcoins and hope to outperform Bitcoin with their diversified portfolio. I believe it's more important to be very selective about the altcoins, to buy the altcoins that other influencers are buying, to buy the altcoins that top traders are buying. And that's why there is the premium membership of this channel. We track various influencer wallets. We've got more than 400 wallets that we are tracking. And so have a look at this. We see here one very good trader buying the TAX token at 3047. That was just a few hours ago. Now we are already up 74%. And so when you enter premium, when you join those different premium Telegram groups, I will send you a private one-on-one video message as well. And I just want to quickly share you the nice response I got. Here is Richard Schuler that's already getting the hang of everything because things are a bit complex. We've got quite a few groups. He's following the trading signals and he's already making money. And so of course I share my view on the market regularly in premium as well. There are premium market updates. And I have profited from this rally with some leverage. Just have a look at the titles of those premium update videos and the dates when they had been released. Besides that, there's also more than 100 different tutorial videos on wallet tracking, on on-chain analytics, on macro, etc. Feel free to check it out. Of course, you're not alone with the wallet tracking and with the learning, etc. There are also dedicated chats on the individual altcoins in premium as well, where we discuss when to buy and when to sell. So yeah, again, this is my invitation for you to join. It's currently $125 per month, and there's also a 1-week money back guarantee. So in case you don't like premium, just message me within the first 7 days and I will refund you 100%. If you got some value out of this video, out of the macro data for Bitcoin, feel free to give this a like. Feel free to also subscribe in case it's your very first time here. See you in the next video or see you in premium. Cheers.